Well, welcome everyone. This is Allie. I'm here representing Main Street Yoga Center, and we're inviting Laura into our Thursday night special collection of rotating classes. And I've got Laura here to chat with us about her new offering that we're calling Embodied Movement. And this is our 90-minute special class that rotates, and Laura will be coming in on the third Thursday of every month. Sometimes that schedule shifts a little bit due to holidays, but you'll see her most regularly the third Thursday of every month at our 6:30 Thursday night special offering embodied movement. So I'm excited to chat with you today. Share a little bit about maybe your tenure here in Madison and how you've kind of come into connection with this offering at Main Street Yoga Center.
Okay. Hi, how's it going? Yeah, so I've been living in Madison for over 20 years now, and I actually used to frequent Main Street Yoga in its previous incarnation, and I would hold workshops there. And now Alex, has this amazing booming studio, and I've reconnected more recently with the studio. And I actually have an office that I work from I can see it from I'm in my office right now, where I do body work and healing arts, and I see people one-on-one, and I can see out my window, I can see Main Street Yoga across the way. So that's always kind of cool. Um, I feel like my story, I'm always compartmentalizing my story because it's like, which part of the story? I feel like there's many lifetimes, many versions of my story, but not sure where to start. Not sure where to start with that.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad that you're right in the neighborhood and we can invite you just close over to the studio. Um, how about your frame on like somatic movement? Like you noted that you're a body worker, so you're familiar with bodies. How about leading movement classes, or how did you kind of come into that um, iteration of your offering?
Yeah, yeah. So, I guess just to pause before I answer that and say, like, one of my core styles, I guess, as a facilitator and as a healer and as a leader is like vulnerability. So it's like, as we're here, I think I mentioned to you, Allie, like I was really nervous to do the interview, because I'm not really used to being on camera. So it's like, that's like coming in, it starts, if that comes up for me, um, I just like to name it. So here I am naming that right now. And that's something that you can usually expect in a room with me, like whether we're working together one-on-one. I mean, obviously that comes with some with a grain of salt, right? It's like if I'm not the client in the room, I'm not going to have a full-on meltdown process. But that being said, it's like, you know, emotions are running through our lives, everyone's life, and the backdrop of what we're all living right now. And maybe that's said in all different times of life and all different ages, but I've been hearing that again now, like, this backdrop is very filled with information. That's filled with social injustices, filled with fear. And this is a backdrop that we're living, in front of or in, or however you want to look at that. And so, I mean, that's the first thing I want to say is like, I'm human. I'm very human, and I'm very willing to, just be vulnerable when that is called for. Um, and that feels to me like even just naming that just feels like I can sigh and just, okay, now I'm ready for this interview. It's like, okay, there was a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of um, tension around that. And it's actually a perfect lead into like what somatics are about. And somatics, it's like, okay, there's mental activity and there's tension and there's emotions. And then how do we experience that in our body, in our wholeness of being, right? Not just like these thoughts that are kind of, they can be frenetic and then they can cause the emotions and we react to the with the emotions. And so somatics is a way of like kind of settling with that and feeling like, how do we feel that in our body? And how do we kind of, in a way, clear away all that noise that can come in front of it and just sense it and feel it in the body? That's like the first thing to me that somatics really means, being present with whatever is there and what is arising for you in that moment. And maybe it's not what's quite arising, maybe it's something that's buried and that's been buried for a really long time. And it's something that is like emerging, right? Emerging through, maybe we're doing a little excavating and maybe we're doing a little bit of digging because, something in our life isn't quite right. And there's anxiety or there's depression or there's emotions, and we don't really know what that's about, and maybe we do know kind of what it's about, but there's something underneath and we can feel that charge that's kind of like coming through and making that more intense. Like maybe there's a present time thing that's kind of alive or triggering you, but then you can tell that there's just something more energized underneath that's like giving that more intensity that it maybe should have or that it should have to the logical mind. So that's part of what brings somatic practice to life for me. Um, I guess the movement piece of it is like I'm just a natural mover. I love movement. Um, It's funny, like when I was a child, my dad, like, I have a whole story where, I took ballet when I was like a little kid and stuff like that. I had a very embarrassing moment when I did a ballet performance when I was like 5 or 6 years old. It was terrible. It was like they made me pull my hair back, so it was really tight and hurt my face. And then I had to wear lipstick, which I hated, and I was like rubbing it off. And then I cartwheeled across the stage. All we had to do was like cartwheel across the stage. And I did it the wrong way. Like my back was to the audience. And I just remember everybody laughing. So, like that's like my first memory of like dance or movement in front of people. And then fast forward to like my teenage years, my dad was very strict and I was waiting for him to pick me up after school. I would always wait kind of down by the gym. And they were having like a dance practice for like the dance team. And I remember joining in to try to learn some of the moves. And um, again, my dad came and saw me and he was like, that he kind of whisked me away from that and said, like, that's not, that's for airheads. So it's like there's a message, right, that goes into the body, it goes into the database, right? So anyway, that was kind of how what I grew up with. And then somehow ballet was okay, but this other type of dance wasn't okay, right? How it was seen by my father. And then, but I think I've just rediscovered just as a growing teen and into my younger years of like going to the dance club and dancing. And so then I really found that I had such a joy of moving. And then I explored martial arts like capoeira. I lived in Brazil for many years. And so I explored, actually not when I was living there, but after I moved back to the States, I explored capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial art. That's a very fluid movement. It's kind of like a martial art that looks like a dance. And also, other Brazilian styles of dance like Afro-Brazilian dance and samba and things like that. And so that really reignited to like my passion for dance. And parallel to this, I was also, went through a 4-year healing school called Inner Focus. And one of the meditations that we used was called dynamic meditation. So it was like we used our body to kind of like release and move. And so for me, it was kind of this marriage of like using movement and breath for healing, and then this passion for just like the beauty of dance and how it feels in the body. And then I started finding different pathways that, that already have existed out there. Like there's the 5 rhythms practice of Gabriel Roth. There's like a branch off of that after Gabriel passed away. There's a new body of work called open floor movement. And then I've kind of developed my own way of working with these things through my training in shamanism and training as a body worker and training as a hands-on light body worker. So Can I talk up, take a
Wow.
pause there because I feel like I said a lot.
Well,
I hope I
I'm,
answered your question at
yeah,
all. Remember
yeah,
what it was, but
I am one, just grateful that you have come forward into our space of Main Street Yoga Center. I think our students will be very lucky to kind of receive some of that guidance or even the container in which you'll be kind of providing for this new Thursday night special. A couple things that were kind of interesting there. One, like, thanks for coming into the present moment with me now and sharing that moment of vulnerability. I think we need spaces where folks can come and just be their whole selves and be accepted in that space. So thank you for demonstrating that right off the bat here. And then two, you said something about like this time and space to process, like kind of the backdrop that's going that this like that constant noise that might be in our lives. And I know I'm hungry for those spaces, right? Where can I process or just be with my body and even either like uncovering or like what is that emerging feeling that I have not had time or space to be with. I think, a yoga practice helps us with that. I think dedicating to kind of showing up to a space that is nurturing that experience, is a wonderful place to be. So we're excited that, um, you'll have those experiences, one that you just kind of brought us into here, and two, like your experience with movement and dance, and healing and um, moving through perhaps challenging energies or energies that aren't really, processed out in open spaces. So I'm curious, it is a yoga studio. Where do you think, um, what should people expect, or how might this class, meet the practice of yoga? And what is your kind of take on that?
yeah. Well, for one, I'm curious too how that's going to all, complement each other and fit together. But, I see yoga being a very, well, obviously, with the hatha yoga, and I'm not a yoga expert, so my understanding of hatha yoga is more like the postural practice of yoga. Um, Obviously it's very body based in that way, and there's that energetic languaging that is brought to yoga that talks about the energy centers, and then there's the philosophical aspect that talks about you know like the Yoga Sutras, and how in a way like direction on how to live, and some suggestions of how one might attain like liberation and things like that, enlightenment at best, right? And for me, it's very aligned because it's like bringing all that kind of energy in through the body, right? The energy of existence, the energy of something greater than oneself, and kind of allowing that to kind of I mean, it's almost like we are it already, but we are kind of separate from it, and we feel like we're separate from it. So from our perspective of where we're sitting, we can imagine it coming through us, right? We can imagine like becoming one with the flow of life. And for me, the embodied movement practice that I hope to share here in the studio is very much about that. It's about feeling into the body and letting go of different resistances that we have. I mean, obviously, like tension is useful. It keeps us upright, a specific type of tension here and there we need. When it's chronic tension, or when it's tension that's blocked by traumas or habitual ways of moving, then those tensions become constrictive on our bodies and on our lives. And so much like yoga, movement is more like a free form way. This embodied movement that I hope to bring is a little more of a free form way. So it's less, what would you call it? Like prescriptive. Like the yoga might be a little more prescriptive, where we hold the posture in such a way, it's more like feeling into the body and seeing and I know yoga can contain, can include this as well, but it's more feeling into the body and seeing where it wants to move, what wants to um, be released. And again, what information are we getting from that? Like, how are we experiencing that? And maybe it's not information like in words, but it's information in feeling or in sensation. And then we can, through that, become more of who we truly are, and kind of free up our energy for creative work and for joy, and not just like, oh, where's the tension? Where's the pain? Where's the constriction? And sometimes it ends up seeming like that, like we're looking for the pain or the constriction or the block or the wound or whatever it is. But to me, that's we're trying to move through that and then into like what's possible into that expansion.
Mm.
And, we're not always meant to be super expanded. So, there's that breathing, right? We're breathing, we're expanding, we're contracting. Our whole being is doing that and kind of finding some balance with when to be expanded, when to be contracted.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's really similar in yoga,
Yeah.
and it's how I envision movement helping people.
Wonderful. I'm feeling into right now kind of the arc of maybe how your class might kind of
Mhm.
begin and peak and end. And do you want to speak to the structure of the class, just kind of logistically a little bit, like what people can expect when they come in on Thursday nights, the third Thursday?
Yeah. Well, it is going to be my first class this week. So I have a plan and I'm still working on it. So it's like, in a way, I mean, this is a new partnership. So I'm trying to leave space for the class to kind of show itself. And that's really how I find the most inspiring to work, in the manner in which I find most inspiring to work, which is like I have an idea, but I also want to like serve the community and serve the group in the best way possible. So it's not set in stone, and I kind of want to, kind of feel into that. That being said, my vision is to kind of get settled in the space, maybe talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing. Um, Probably ease into it with some like body-based meditation. So one of the ideas I have to bring to these third Thursdays is to use different maps. And so the most obvious and accessible map is just the body. It's like just starting here in the body and kind of scanning through, maybe moving different parts of the body, things like that. Um, but like I also there's the sensation of the body, but there's also like the poetic, right? I mean, I really want to open that interpretation of what people are feeling, so that it can be, I guess, poetic, for lack of a better word. Or, I think of ourselves as mythic beings, so it's like we're living into this like sense of self. So we're also, maybe we're feeling a body sensation, or we're feeling how our body might move. Like, let's say we're moving the spine, right? And we're just, oh, okay, well, the spine is physical, it has a function, it has a movement, it might be constricted in a way and free in other ways. And we're going to kind of get in touch with how that might feel in our own body, but then also expand that perception into like, well, what does this spine mean for me? Like, what does it do for me? Right? It's like it represents this fluidity. It's like almost like it's the snake, right? It's the serpent of our body. And so there's that possibility as well, as kind of opening the experience to be kind of like a story, our own personal story, and kind of finding like, well, what is my story, or what is this movement and this sensation right now telling me about my story?
Mm.
And that's all kind of just a suggestion and kind of an offering. It doesn't mean that you have to do that. Everything's very invitational. So there might be suggestions, and then you can always, say yes or say no to the suggestion. So that would be kind of like a warm up or like an entry point into the class. I mean, I'm hoping to kind of bring a theme each time. whether it's like yin and yang, like we're gonna work with more flowing or receptive type movement and versus more like powerful and kind of definitive type movement. So we can kind of get this flavor or this sense of that the range too of like, of course, we're all very multidimensional and multifaceted. We have different aspects of ourself. And so being able to kind of access those parts of us through movement, um, I also find to be really powerful in the practice. So I'm not sure if I really gave a good idea, but I mean, I also hope to have a little bit of the possibility of bringing content to the practice, like doing that excavating and not necessarily doing a lot of talking about it per se, but maybe writing something down on a card. Like I might guide you to write something or ask a question, and then maybe just like, oh, I'm going to jot that down, or maybe at the beginning of practice having kind of a question that you're arriving with, a question or a theme that you're working with, whether it's directly related to what you think you're doing when you're moving. It might be that at the end of class, suddenly this theme, after just moving in a certain ways, your theme becomes more clear, or your question just doesn't seem to be as big of a mystery anymore, just
Mm.
magically.
Oh,
Because we're
yeah.
getting out of our heads a little bit and
Mm.
into the body and just letting things kind of emerge,
Yeah.
so.
It's almost it's nature's way, right, to express in this unfolding way. So I'm loving what you're bringing here already. I'm gonna have to mark a third Thursday on my calendar, I feel like, for this experience. And I think what's also coming forward is this idea of story and how can we be engaged with our personal stories, ones that may be kind of buried in the body or, something that's emerging. Or I love how you said, you can come in with a question or something to unfold with during this class. And that's powerful. I'm looking forward to seeing some of that guidance come forward with you at the helm of these classes, third Thursdays. Is there anything else, you want to share that either inspires you or, um, what you hope folks will kind of come in and commune with in this class with you?
Yeah, I mean, I actually brought a book with me because I was like, we're gonna do an interview, and I'm a words are powerful for me personally, and I use a lot of poetry and readings sometimes in my classes. We'll see if this class will be that way. But I went to this book, Belonging. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful book called Belonging. I don't know if you can see it if or it's going to be backwards, but
Yeah.
Tokopa, Remembering Ourselves Home. And I just happened to open up to this page, which is perfect. And to me, it's very much what any of these paths of awakening are about. It's like really tuning in to your own vibration and your own essence. There is a wilderness in every person, a way of walking, a set of spots, an inclination, a blinking impulse that silently draws us forward. Like an elephant finding water in a desert it has never traveled, or a bird coming to fly with brand new wings. We all have this instinctual capacity. It is the animal in us that knows what it knows, and it's the origin from which all creativity is expressed. Instinct is the part of us, as in all animals, that knows without thinking what and when to do something, how to respond, which way to go. Like the salmon that swims its way across hundreds of river miles to its birthplace, we too have inborn impulses that don't require thinking to get us there. Instinct is our right responsiveness guiding us towards our yeses and away from our no's. One more quick piece. It is through this instinctual nature that our soul's medicine for the world flows. For many of us, however, this wilderness within has been so domesticated and harnessed for its resources that we have barely recognized its call. But just as a plot of land can be rewilded by a kind of leaving it alone, so too can we rewild our psyches by ceasing quote unquote self-development and allowing mystery to work upon us.
Mm.
Not that there's anything wrong with self-development, but I think the message here is like allowing and being and kind of like that there is an innate wisdom in that. And if we can reconnect with that, then a lot can happen.
Yeah. And finding those yeses, right? And in ways of embodied movement. So I'm excited again for this opportunity for you to be with the Main Street Yoga Center community. And thank you so much, Laura. We'll see you on the third Thursday
Okay, I
at
hope to see
6:30.
lots of you there. Thank you, Allie.